Rachel here from Beads by Verchiel, bringing you a tutorial on making wire wrap roses. And the tutorial is in association with my appearance with my craft kits on Hochanda. So if you have bought a kit, thank you for buying the kit, and I hope you'll find this tutorial useful in completing your wire wrap rose. You are going to need, which you should have in your kits, 0.8mm wire, which is your thicker wire for making the base of the rose. And then you will need a finer wire, which will either be a 0.3 or 0.4mm wire. And that's the wire that you use to wrap with. You'll also need a centre crystal, which is the 6mm crystal, and a selection of 0.3mm crystals. You will have some chain in your pack, which you can adjust according to your length that you require. A very random bead, which has a very good purpose, which helps you to gauge the thickness of your weaves. You will need some flat nose pliers, otherwise known as parallel pliers. You will need some chain nose pliers. You will also need some round nose pliers for doing some looping, and some cutters as well. These are not essential, but if you're going to be doing a lot of wire work, I would certainly recommend you invest in a pair of nylon jaw pliers. They straighten your wires out and they get kinks out of your wires. So you would just literally run that along and that will just get out the kinks from your wires. Now, if you've got any kinks, avoid the temptation to use your metal pliers, because what will happen is you will take off the surface metal. Because these are plated, they're all copper based wires. So let's get started. I'm going to zoom in so that you can see what I'm doing. Before we do that, what we're going to need is to actually cut a length of 42 centimetres of the 0.8mm wire. This is your 6mm fire polish crystal that will be in your kit. So we're going to thread that onto your thicker wire, and you want to find your halfway point. So bring both of your ends together to find your halfway point. Bring your wires like so and cross them over, and then we're going to make a twist. So pinch the 6mm crystal and bring your wires around like so. So you've actually anchored that in place. I would suggest that you actually work directly from the reel. Get yourself a bit of a tail, and with the tail just bring it through and wrap it round the base that you've just formed, and that will just allow your wires to keep some stability as you're weaving. I'd suggest probably about 3 wraps on there. You might just want to keep the tail there until you've started your weave. Now bring this wire underneath and to the right, and we're going to make 4 wraps on the right hand side. And we're now going to begin our figure of 8 weave. Bring your wire between the 2 wires, and we're going to wrap to the other side 4 times. We're going to continue with that weave, but what would be really useful is we're going to pop this bead on the side that we're not working. So we've just wrapped this side, and it acts as a gauge as you're going. So you can see that's the width you want to keep. So we're going to swap it from that side to the other side. So that's the one that we've just woven. And we're going to do another figure of 8. So we come in under and over. Now really this only starts to have any purpose as we really start getting into the weave. But what you want to do is, as you're going up, you want to keep the thickness of this side of the bead. Hopefully it'll all become clear as we're going. So we're going under and over and doing 4 wraps. And I think we can safely cut our tail end off from the base there. But I would suggest continue with that weave, switch this over to the side that you've just woven so that it doesn't get in the way. And as you can see, it's starting to act as a gauge for your thickness. Now we're going to trim off this tail before we go any further. So to do that, you have the flat edge of your pliers against your wire. So you're going to trim that off, and then if you've got any raw edges sticking out, is just guide those with your chain nose pliers to make sure you've got no excess wires sticking out. Continue with this weave, alternating on each side until you have 2.5 centimetres of wire wrapping. So we want it, so if you measure it from the cross, we need to go up to here. So I'm going to put this on fast forward whilst I continue to weave, and then I'll show you what we do with the next bit. Now it's at this stage where we add our 3mm crystals. So that's where we're at with our figure of 8 weave, and that little bead there has helped us to keep a straight line. Still going to use our bead gauge. We're going to pop that crystal on the side that we're about to weave next, and you're going to weave above it. Just weave as before, but using a 3mm crystal just below it. We're going to do the same the other side, and we're going to wrap again above that, so the weave itself is not changing. So we do 4 wraps. So we're going to continue again with the same weave as before. Follow the instructions in your guide, in your kit, and the second group we add at the 3cm point. So I will continue with my weave on fast forward, and I'll come back to you at the 3cm. The first group of weave we did was a 2.5cm length, measuring from the V here to the first crystal. So for the second group of crystals, if you measure from the end of the first crystal you added for 3 centimetres, add in a crystal on the same side as the first one that we added. I'm going to keep my little measuring bead, and we're going to wrap around that crystal. And then we'll add a crystal on the other side. If you have any problems adding any of your crystals on, then just trim the end of your wire, and it makes it much easier to go on there. So we're going to continue weaving until we've got another group, the third group. I'm going to carry on, and I'm going to put up on the screen what measurements are in between each weave. I'm just going to put this on fast forward, and I'm going to come back to you so that I can show you the final stage of actually putting our wire wrap rows together. We've done our weave. You've got the middle bead here. You've got all your 5 groups of crystals. I'm going to take off my bead gauge. When you finish that, you want to cut a tail of about 18 centimetres. I'm going to start wrapping the weave around this centre bead here. Now my top tip is you may find that gaps start to appear in your weave. Just simply push the weave down. Bring this behind the first group that you've just done. So push that down if you've got any gaps appearing. Keep twisting. So I'm just going to show you how we finish off. I'm going to bring this lower wire up vertically and that one horizontally. This one I'm going to wrap around this one. And then we're going to trim off the excess. Now, don't trim off your 0.3mm wire just yet. Now we're going to trim roughly about 1 centimetre from these 2 loops. With our chain nose pliers, we're going to turn that almost at a 90-degree angle. Then we're going to use our looping pliers. Sit it about 1 centimetre from the tip of the pliers, make sure it sits flush, and then start to turn until it touches just above the top of the rose there. Now with this excess wire, it's almost like a little bit of sewing. You're going to actually weave in between parts of your rose, so you want it to be invisible, but you want it to be quite stable as well. You do that throughout the rose so that you've got it nice and secure. I'm going to pop the chain through the loop you've just formed. At the ends, you're going to add a jump ring on one and a jump ring and a clasp on the other. Now the jump rings are open. You want the slit at the 12 o'clock and you want to clamp it in your chain nose pliers and open it slightly. Now normally if you're right-handed you have the clasp on the right and vice versa. So you pop that on there and then you'll close that up. And then you open that up for the other one and you pop a jump ring on the other side and close that up. Your completed pendant with your chain. So I hope you found that tutorial useful, and I hope you enjoyed making your wire wrap rose. I mean, you could always make it into a brooch, you could make it into a hairpiece, you could make a really big rose with it as well. If you've got any questions, do pop me a note in the comments. Please do give me a thumbs up and pop me a note in the comments so I know you were present with me. I hope you enjoyed that, and do hop on over to my YouTube channel to check out my other tutorials. Thank you for joining me. See you soon. Bye.